If you're driving through the town of Ashbury Falls at night, there's one road the locals will tell you to avoid. It's called Miller's Hollow Road, and it winds up through the pine forest to a house that has stood empty for almost 40 years. Almost empty, because according to everyone who has ever spent a night there, something still lives inside it. This is the story of what happened to the last person who tried to find out what that something was. Her name was Claire Bennett, and she was 26 years old when she inherited the house from a great-aunt she had never met. The lawyer who called her said the house had been in the family for generations, passed down through a will that nobody in the family wanted to touch. Claire didn't believe in ghosts. She was a photographer, practical, skeptical, the kind of person who needed evidence before she believed anything. So when she heard the stories about the house, she laughed them off as small-town superstition, and she decided to spend a week there, fixing it up, taking photos, maybe selling it. She should have listened to the stories. The drive up Miller's Hollow Road took almost 20 minutes from the center of town, the pavement giving way to gravel, then to dirt, the trees growing thicker and darker the higher she climbed. Halfway up, she stopped at a small gas station to fill her tank, and the old man behind the counter looked at her for a long moment when she mentioned where she was headed. "You're going up to the Miller place?" he asked, setting down the rag he'd been using to wipe the counter. "I inherited it," Claire said. "Just going to look around, maybe fix it up." The old man didn't say anything for a moment. Then he reached under the counter and pulled out a small flashlight, pressing it into her hands even though she hadn't asked for one. "Just in case," he said. "And if you hear humming after dark, you get in your car and you don't look back. You understand me?" Claire laughed it off at the time, thanking him for the flashlight and driving on, but something about the seriousness in his eyes stayed with her the rest of the drive. By the time she reached the house, the sun was already low, throwing long orange shadows across a yard choked with weeds. The house itself was a tall Victorian structure, 3 stories of peeling white paint and dark windows, with a widow's walk on the roof that seemed to stare out over the valley like an eye. Claire parked her car, grabbed her bags, and let herself in with the old iron key the lawyer had given her. The inside smelled like dust and something faintly sweet, like flowers left too long in a vase. Sheets covered most of the furniture, and a thick layer of undisturbed dust coated the floor, except, she noticed uneasily, for a single hallway on the second floor, where the dust seemed strangely thin, as though someone had walked there recently. She told herself it was nothing. Old houses settled, air moved through them in strange ways. That first night, she slept in a guest room near the stairs, too tired from the drive to think much about the strange thin patch of dust. She fell asleep quickly. She woke at exactly 3:17 in the morning to the sound of someone humming. It was a woman's voice, soft and slow, drifting up through the floorboards from somewhere below her. Claire lay frozen in the dark, telling herself it was the wind, or a pipe, or her imagination playing tricks after a long drive. But the humming didn't stop. It moved. First it seemed to come from directly beneath her room, and then, over the course of several long minutes, it seemed to travel down the hallway outside her door, pausing right outside, so close that she swore she could hear breathing beneath the tune. She did not open the door. She lay awake until sunrise, and when the light finally came through the curtains, she told herself it had been a dream. In the morning, she found something that made it much harder to believe that. On the dusty floor of the hallway outside her room, there was a single line of small, bare footprints, leading from the top of the stairs to her door, and stopping there, as though whoever made them had simply stood outside her room all night. Claire almost left that day. She sat in her car with the keys in her hand for almost 20 minutes, engine running, staring up at the house in the morning light. But she was stubborn, and she told herself there had to be a rational explanation. Maybe a local kid had broken in, playing a prank on the outsider who'd inherited the haunted house. Maybe she had walked in her sleep and left the prints herself, though they were smaller than her own feet, and she could not explain the humming. Instead of leaving, she drove into town and stopped at the small local library, hoping to find some record of the house's history. The librarian, an older woman named Dorothy who had lived in Ashbury Falls her entire life, recognized the address immediately. "You're not staying up there alone, are you?" Dorothy asked, her voice dropping even though the library was empty. Claire admitted that she was, and Dorothy sighed, disappearing into the back room before returning with a thin folder of old newspaper clippings that she said the library kept for people like you, people who inherited the house and came asking questions. According to the clippings, a young girl named Rose Miller had lived in the house in the late 1970s with her parents, who owned a modest timber business in the valley. In the winter of 1978, 7-year-old Rose vanished from the house one night while her parents slept. Search parties combed the surrounding forest for weeks, but no trace of her was ever found, not a shoe, not a scrap of clothing, nothing. The case was never solved. Some townspeople believed she had wandered outside into the snow and died of exposure, her body carried off by animals before it could be discovered. Others whispered that something had already been living in the house long before the Millers ever moved in, something that had taken Rose, and had been waiting inside those walls ever since for someone new to replace her. Dorothy told Claire that every subsequent owner of the house had lasted only a matter of weeks before selling or abandoning it, always citing the same strange details. Humming in the night, small footprints in the dust, and in a few unsettling accounts, dreams of a little girl in a white dress, asking them to stay and play with her forever. The families that lasted longest, Dorothy said quietly, were the ones who left the first time they heard the humming. The ones who stayed to investigate, to prove it wasn't real. Those are the ones people still talk about. Claire asked what she meant, and Dorothy simply shook her head and said that some of them were never seen leaving the house at all. Despite everything Dorothy told her, Claire found herself unable to simply walk away. She had never believed in ghosts, and some stubborn part of her mind insisted that there was a logical explanation: an old caretaker living secretly in the walls, a prankster, a trick of sound traveling through old pipes. She thanked Dorothy for her time, bought a set of extra flashlights and batteries from the hardware store, and drove back up Miller's Hollow Road as the sun began to set for the second time. That second night, she set up a small camera in the hallway outside her room, pointed toward the thin patch of disturbed dust, determined to catch whatever, or whoever, was responsible. The second night was quiet, almost peaceful, and Claire began to relax. She spent the evening going through boxes of old photographs she'd found in the attic, portraits of a family she barely recognized, and one photograph in particular caught her attention. It showed a young girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing in front of the house, wearing an old-fashioned white dress. On the back, in faded pencil, someone had written a single name: Rose. 1978. Claire felt a chill looking at the photograph, recognizing the same white dress that Dorothy had described. She placed it carefully back in the box and told herself she would give it to a local historical society before she left. She went to bed around midnight, and this time, she slept through until morning without incident. When she reviewed the camera footage the next day, her hands began to shake. For the first 6 hours, the hallway was still and silent, exactly as she remembered it. But at 3:17 in the morning, the exact same time as the humming the night before, the footage flickered, just for a fraction of a second, like a skipped frame. And in that single frame, frozen for less than a heartbeat, there was a small figure standing at the end of the hallway. A little girl, in a pale dress, her face turned directly toward the camera, her eyes nothing but dark, empty hollows. Claire watched the frame over and over, zooming in, trying to convince herself it was a trick of the light, a reflection, anything but what it appeared to be. But the longer she stared at it, the more certain she became that the girl in the frame was the same girl from the photograph in the attic. She should have left the house right then. Instead, driven by a mixture of fear and an almost desperate need for answers, she decided to spend one final night in the house, determined to stay awake through the early hours of the morning and see, with her own eyes, whatever was walking those halls. She made coffee, set up 2 more cameras throughout the house, and sat in the living room with every light turned on, waiting for 3:17 to arrive. The hours passed slowly. Around 2 a.m., she heard the first faint creak of a floorboard upstairs, though she told herself old houses always made such sounds as they cooled in the night air. Around 2:45, she heard what sounded like a small voice singing, faint and far away, somewhere above her. And then, at exactly 3:17, every light in the house went out at once. Claire sat frozen in the sudden darkness, her flashlight clutched tightly in her hand, the old man's warning from the gas station echoing in her mind. And then she heard it, closer than it had ever been before. The humming, coming not from upstairs, but from directly behind her, in the same room. She spun around, flashlight beams sweeping across the room, and there, standing just a few feet away, was Rose. Her bare feet were black with old dirt, her white dress hung in tatters around her thin frame, and her eyes, when she finally lifted her head to look at Claire, were the same empty hollows from the camera footage. The girl tilted her head, studying Claire with an expression that was almost curious, almost sad, and in a small, hollow voice, she said only one sentence. "You have to stay now. Everyone always has to stay." Claire didn't remember running down the stairs, or fumbling with the front door, or driving back down Miller's Hollow Road in the dark with her headlights barely illuminating the winding gravel path. She only remembered arriving at the same gas station on the edge of town, shaking so badly she could barely speak, the same old man stepping outside when he saw her car pull in. He didn't ask her what happened. He simply nodded, as though he already knew, and told her that she was luckier than most, because she had made it out before sunrise. Claire called the lawyer from that gas station, telling him she wanted nothing more to do with the house, that he could burn it down for all she cared. She left Ashbury Falls that same morning and never returned. The house was eventually sold at auction to a developer who planned to renovate it into a bed and breakfast. Construction began that spring, but stopped abruptly after only 2 weeks, when the entire crew refused to return to the site. The foreman later told a local reporter that every single one of his workers reported hearing a child humming somewhere in the empty house, always at exactly the same time each night, always at 3:17 in the morning. 2 of the workers refused to speak about what they saw in the upstairs hallway at all, and quit the job the very next day. Dorothy, the librarian, kept the thin folder of newspaper clippings for years afterward, adding Claire's story to it in her own careful handwriting, just as she had added the stories of every owner before her. She said once, in an interview with a small local paper doing a piece on the town's legends, that she believed Rose Miller was not truly a ghost in the way people imagined ghosts to be. She believed Rose was still waiting, still lonely, still hoping that someone would come to stay with her the way no one ever had after that winter in 1978. To this day, the house on Miller's Hollow Road stands empty. The town has stopped trying to sell it. The developer's company quietly wrote off the property as a loss, and it has sat untouched now for years, its windows dark, its widow's walk still staring silently out over the valley. Some say that if you drive past on a quiet night, you can still see a faint light moving from room to room on the second floor, as though someone were walking slowly through the house, searching for something, or someone. And if you ever find yourself driving up that winding road late at night, past the pines and the fading gravel, and you happen to glance up at the house on the hill, they say you should be very careful what time it is. Because if it's 3:17, they say the humming starts whether you're inside the house or not. Some who have driven past at exactly that hour swear they heard it clearly through their closed car windows, faint but unmistakable, a child's tune drifting down from that dark hill, following them for just a little while, down the winding road, back toward the safety of town. They say Rose is still waiting up there. And they say she is very patient.